Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers, middle of the week show. We're just going to talk about a bunch of stuff we've got written down, kind of get into the game we just came out of and look forward to maybe some solutions for the game ahead. We face the 49ers this coming Sunday in a big NFC matchup with a team in the Seahawks that is definitely not trending in the right direction. 4 days later, we face the Rams as well. So not an easy go here in the next week and a half. And we're going to see if we can right the ship here on this show. So welcome in, Keith.
Yeah. So this is a ship that needs righted because you lose these next 2 games. You're sitting at 1-4 after 5 games. You're also looking at the fact that you would have 2 in division losses, and God, that's just a mess. Probably, they could be 4 games behind the Rams at that point, plus the tiebreaker, plus
it's over.
At that point,
there's not very many teams that have ever gone 1-4 that have A, won a division, B, even made it to the playoffs. Let's just be realistic here. Stuff's happening beyond our control. But again, it wouldn't be completely off the rails because of just the quality of teams we faced. Those are going to be tough games no matter which way you slice it. So
yeah, they will have faced 5 teams, all of which are in the playoff picture. They're all teams that are expected to be playoff teams. And so
it just goes to show you the margin of error on this team is just not very high. And it hasn't been for a few years, but particularly right now.
Well, and especially on offense, because the defense is so bad that the offense can't make a mistake. They can't.
Not even a 3 and out. That's the kind of mistake that we're talking about. Is just basic. Which they can't even afford to go 3 and out. They have to be able to get at least a couple of first downs so they can flip the field.
Yeah, so they didn't get it. They didn't have a 3 and out in this last game. Their drives that failed in the second half were 5 plays, and 6 plays. They got first downs, not enough. But man, it was such a mess on the other side of the ball that it didn't matter what the offense did.
All right, so Keith, do you have an agenda? Do you have topics that you really feel like you need to talk about after this game? Seahawks Twitter out there is crazy. The online communities are just kind of wanting to know, what's going on? Is it fixable? Or is this the moment? Is this a moment literally in the franchise that is kind of a transcending moment where we're seeing the beginning of the end?
I think that we kind of are. Because Pete Carroll is super loyal to a fault. And I think you see his loyalty towards Ken Norton Jr. Going to be the downfall of
the scheme
this year. Yes. And I think that's really what it's coming down to, and it is becoming a problem. Now, if you look at what's going on, you also have Flowers and Reed and Amadi coming out and again saying things to the media against the scheme and how they're basically being asked to do things that is causing them to give up all of these receptions, and it's making it easier for the offense because they're being told you have to go do this. Don't worry about giving up the reception. Just don't let a guy get behind you. And so by doing what they're being asked to do in the scheme, that it's causing a problem. And that really comes down to, it's a mess, but what you're getting there as you have players that are losing, you've lost, right? You've lost the
faith of the players.
Yeah,
The same
players.
thing. The weird thing about this whole thing, Keith, is the same exact thing happened last year.
Yeah,
And that's what makes it egregious for me. Is you're dealing with in fact, I went into the half season mark last year thinking that definitely, absolutely, that Ken Norton Jr. this was going to be his last season. I'm talking 2020 with the Seattle Seahawks, right? And you kind of improved enough where he barely hung on last year.
Well, I don't know if that's true, because they didn't kind of improve enough. Yeah, the end of the year, like the overall totals didn't seem to be that great, but over the last 6 games, they were arguably the best defense in the league, if not top 3. They were number 1 in sacks.
Well, you're certainly going to need that transformation right now at this moment in order to save him, I believe.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that true? I think in order to save him on
the season
in a normal team, yeah, they do need that. They need that transition. But given Pete Carroll and his loyalty and how long he'll stick with things that aren't working, I don't know if that's true. Are we saving Ken Norton, or do we need that to save Ken Norton's job, or will the team continue to just make excuses and let Ken Norton be mediocre at his job? And then
that was your reply to me. Like when we had a private conversation this weekend, you basically came out and said, yeah, I think we're probably just going to end up hearing excuses again. And I was like, maybe, but man, there needs to be some accountability going on here. And maybe that involves a job or two. Now, I don't think Ken Norton Jr.'s job is on the line, but a guy like Trey Flowers' starting position might be on the line.
And it probably should be. I know in our earlier show this week, it sounded like I was defending Flowers, and I wasn't meaning to. I'm saying that there are some things that he's saying when he's criticizing the scheme that aren't wrong. That doesn't mean he's playing well. He's still playing poorly. It's just saying that the things he's saying are
it can
right.
Be both. It can be both.
It can be both. But maybe the criticisms of the scheme should have come from someone else, someone who actually was playing decently, like DJ Reed, who hasn't been playing outstanding, but he's been playing significantly better than Trey Flowers.
And then Ugo Amadi. So Ugo Amadi last year had a great year, I thought. You know,
he did.
Blair was kind of assigned the starting role in the nickel. Last year, got injured. Amadi came in, had a great season, finished strong, kind of got burned a little bit in the playoffs, but that aside, came in this year as kind of the heir apparent with Blair knocking on the door. And all of a sudden, Amadi's a bad player. Like that's kind of weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, he got eaten up by Jefferson in this game. I think that
and company.
Well, true, but Jefferson especially ate him up. I think that was a bad matchup.
And he had that public display of affection where he held on off the line of scrimmage there and really cost us in a bad spot there.
Yeah, I mean, he had a terrible, a terrible
defensive holding. Yeah,
that was there. But I mean, I'm willing to at least let him play it out.
Oh, me too. Absolutely. Me too.
With Flowers, this is year 4. He played well as a rookie, and he hasn't played well since.
He's just proven the fact that he's just not a starting caliber defensive back in the NFL. You know,
which makes the decision
you said something.
I would say it makes the decision to go with him over Witherspoon just really questionable,
especially in this scheme. So you mentioned last show that you thought maybe Flowers was a better man-to-man cover guy and could belong in a different scheme and actually maybe mature and develop in a man cover scheme where he's not getting that in this.
The stats from the last 2 years bear that out. In man coverage, he's a significantly better player with better stats than in zone coverage. In zone coverage, he's genuinely bad. In man, he's we'll say league average.
Well, and I think the scroll at the bottom of the screen is where's the physicality on the team, and I think the man cover situation for him allows him to be physical, allows him to use his 6'2" stature, 6'3", 205, 207 pounds of physicality on those wide receivers that he's not able present at all in a zone situation. Okay, so let's talk about Ken Norton Jr.
Okay.
I understand the loyalty. I really do. I admire the loyalty that Pete Carroll has. It's one of his best qualities. It's also one of his worst qualities.
It's both.
Mm.
There are times a couple of years ago, Chris Carson had all those fumbles, and Pete Carroll showed loyalty to him. They kept going back to him, and then he just had some monster games after that. They could have, basically turned on him and moved on and been like, he doesn't protect the ball, and it would have been justified. But right now he'd be running over people for another team instead of running over people on Seattle's behalf. And so that loyalty was great in that situation. His loyalty to Brian Schottenheimer cost this team opportunities to compete for a Super Bowl. And his loyalty to Ken Norton Jr. is going to cost this team. Let's be honest. For the most part, he hasn't been good at hiring assistants. And Ken Norton Jr. is just the latest example.
A lot of folks point to the lack of talent, really kind of putting John Schneider in a corner on this about getting guys into this team and this defense that on paper looked pretty decent to both of us. I mean, we kind of came into the year and had some fairly lofty predictions.
Well, we knew the cornerback situation was bad, but we were like,
it's horrible.
We thought the defensive line could make up for
that.
And it hasn't happened, in part because some really awkward coaching decisions, like playing Benson Mayowa 63% of the snaps against the run first Titans and Derrick Henry.
Yeah. Well, and then they've had, like you've said, the 5-man front stuff where they're then having to drop Taylor and Hyder and Mayowa and some other guys into pass coverage that have really cost. The teams have taken advantage of that. So any hoodaloo. Why don't we do this, Keith? Why don't we take a little quick break, give some props to our TPPN network and our sponsor.
Okay, so we're done with week 3, right? Week 3 is in the books. We're looking ahead to week 4. And, DraftKings Sportsbook's out there. It's the official sports betting partner of the NFL. DraftKings is giving away $150 instantly when you bet $1 on any football game. It's absolutely worth it. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the promo code TPPN. That's the Pigspin Podcast Network, but TPPN to receive $150 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any game. That's promo code TPPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required, one per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details.
Yay. How about that? So thanks for reading the ad. I appreciate that. DraftKings is a great sponsor. Gives us an opportunity to kind of keep going, have some great graphics, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully more in the future. We'll be able to bring in some game film and talk about all that stuff, seemingly when we have time to do that. That's the only criteria at this point to being able to do that. So let's get back to some of the other things that we kind of wanted to bring into the show and kind of hit on them one after the other. Let's talk about Trey Flowers versus a guy they're bringing along slowly. Apparently, he wasn't quite ready to play this week, although Pete said he probably could have. Sidney Jones.
Yeah, at some point they've got to make that transition. They've got to see what they've got in Sidney Jones, because can the defense be worse? Sure, it could be worse, but could it get better? Absolutely. And at some point, you've got to start seeing what other guys can do. Sidney Jones, they brought in right at cut downs, and when the roster was set. And he's a guy with a lot of talent and has had a hard time staying healthy in the past, but that doesn't mean the talent's not there, right? It's just been an availability issue. Well, he's healthy now. He's learning the system. He's coming from Jacksonville, where they played a similar style of defense for some of his time there. And at some point, you've got to just go in and see what you've got. DJ Reed was the mid-year, switch last year. They got him in there, and he turned out to be pretty good. So go see what you've got with with him. And sorry, Trey Flowers, you're not wrong with your criticizing the scheme, but you're not playing well, even within your role. And so go find out, is Sidney Jones the answer? Is he a guy that can come in and make this defense better?
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, and let's get over to the offensive side of the ball and talk about maybe some of the things that are going right. We've talked a lot the last show and then this show about everything that's kind of going wrong, but there are certain things that we can kind of take away that we can build on. And some of those things are on the offensive side of the ball. I think so far this year, when given the opportunity, Russell Wilson is doing a great job. I am concerned a little bit about the opportunities, though, in second halves of games, and Shane Waldron in trying to extend drives with plays maybe that are a little too ambitious, and they need to kind of play within the offensive design a little bit better. But I think they can work those things out. And then you've got individual performances by Lockett and Metcalf and Carson, I think, that are really kind of highlight, the way that the offense is designed and able to work. Carson really is running the ball hard.
Yeah, no, Carson had a great game. In fact, it was really disappointing that in the second half that things turned out the way they did, where the lead disappeared and the number of possessions were non-existent and all of that, because Carson was running so hard and was so productive in that first half. That would have been nice to just have the team kind of lean on him a little bit in the second half and to just milk the clock away and run up the score a little bit while just making the clock evaporate on him. That would have been fun, but the game didn't happen that way, and the team had to go away from it. Lockett's been great. They got Metcalf involved early instead of waiting till the second half to get him involved and get him his stats. They got him involved early
and without forcing it. I mean, he was open. I mean, he was just making some plays.
He was. Great players make plays, and that's what he did. And it was one of those things where it's really too bad that we didn't get to see more of it in the second half. But the team only had 3 drives in the second half. The defense just could not get off the field. But I don't want to talk about the defense. Let's stay with the offense.
Yeah, well, let's stay with the offense. I know that you want to talk about some offensive linemen really quick.
I do, because technically the third string right tackle played most of the game, and that would be Jake Curran, the undrafted rookie who came in after Jamarco Jones went out. So Jones played the first 2 series. Curran came in and played the rest of the game. He looked pretty good. Made a couple of mistakes. Wasn't great. Wasn't perfect. But for an undrafted rookie in his third game, really his first action as a pro, I thought he looked pretty good. And it's one of those things where this could be a situation where if Shell doesn't come back quick, Curran could come in and, kind of solidify himself as the right tackle of the future, which wouldn't be a bad thing for the Seahawks.
At least the playing experience right now is not hurting them, at this point. He hasn't hurt them.
He hasn't hurt them, and getting him reps, is only a good thing, because he'll get better with more practice and more reps, and him getting a chance to show and say, hey, look, I'm worthy of a starting spot. If he can make that statement, which he looked like he was going to be able to during the preseason, but now it's the real thing. So we'll see. But if he can make that statement, that answers some big questions going into the offseason, where both of their starters are going to be free agents, and their swing tackle who happens to be on IR and is due to come off it here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Is all three of those guys are on expiring contracts. So if Curran can come in and say and just solidify one of those sides, so they only have to worry about the other side, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I know that Pete Carroll came out and mentioned Abuahe as far as a decision is going to need to be made, as far as whether they bring him back right now or not. And then Kim Dichie has been playing a lot, but he's used up his 3 times elevated off the practice squad, and they're going to have to make a decision this week on Kim Dichie, whether he makes the active roster or he's cut. Other injury situations, they are counting on D. Eskridge to be available this week, which is great news. Although Freddie Swain has been doing an admirable job kind of holding down the fort in that 3rd spot. I think he's actually shown that he's capable of either that 3rd or 4th spot. I am interested to find out that how dynamic Eskridge really does look against pro caliber defenses, because that little element of speed there could really add some nice change of pace to this offense.
Well, and it makes the wide receiver position, instead of 3 deep, it becomes 4 deep, and having that 4th guy could that out there could really make a difference for them. Not just, he's a different type of player, but just to have a 4th good receiver that you can count on makes a difference. I know that, Hart got a few plays in there, and that one it looked like he maybe had a touchdown and the ball was a little underthrown, but right. If that goes to anyone else who has a shot at catching the ball through contact, they probably they might have gotten a touchdown there. But throwing it to Hart was
Penny Hart, 5'8", 180 is okay.
And so that was what it was. But I'm agreeing with you. I think that getting Eskridge back would be great. But really, what they need, this is a team that just they've got a lot of weapons. And
how do you feel about Collins and Penny? Like I as part of this, Penny's got this calf thing. Pete Carroll called him out, and Brandon Shell as being questionable this week, which means one or both is likely not to come back. Rashad Penny's been available for maybe 27 or whatever out of 50 possible games or less. I'm just really don't even know at this point. Rashad Penny has never helped us.
Collins has been fine.
I think so.
He's been fine. He's been good. He had that one big run early last week, and then he had a couple runs in this one. You
just know, though, as soon as we let Penny go, that he's going to land on some team and explode for 175 yards or some wackadoo total and stuff. But at some point you've got to give up on him.
He's got the talent. He's got the talent. When healthy, he is a very good back. The problem is the when healthy part, and that seems to be never.
It is a pro-size situation. It just is. We held on to pro-size for 4 years.
It felt
based on 1 or 2 games of production.
He had a game in 3 quarters his rookie season where he looked outstanding before getting hurt, and he never really got healthy after that, and was never ever a factor in Seattle's plan.
All right, so I wanted to end the show a little bit on just how hard it is to win in the NFL, and particularly the NFC West. Arizona Cardinals, they beat Jacksonville and are now 3-0. Of course, Jacksonville is Jacksonville. Whatever, they're 3-0, and
Jacksonville is
Kyler Murray looks great.
Jacksonville is Jacksonville, but it took a couple of late scores by Arizona to beat Jacksonville.
Winning's hard in the NFL.
Winning's hard in the NFL, and Jacksonville's one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they almost upset Arizona.
But the Rams against Tampa Bay, that was really impressive. Rams are 3-0 and look like they're the clear-cut favorites in the NFC right now.
Yeah, they are statistically the best team in the NFC. And there's no one really all that close to them. They're playing great football.
Which I hate to
good
admit.
football.
I really do hate to admit that.
Me too, but we kind of knew that this was who they were. I mean, they've got the best defensive player in the league and Aaron Donald up front. They've got Ramsey on the back end who's
now they have a quarterback.
Yeah, and they've got a quarterback and they've got a couple of wide receivers, and I mean Cooper Kupp's just having a monster year. And so they're a very tough team. Now, I've been saying this since the preseason. This is a team that's very top heavy in their talent. They don't have a ton of depth, and especially on places like running back and the offensive line and wide receiver. And this is a ship that's going to look very good early and can, maybe sink a little bit later, depending on injuries, because they don't have depth anywhere on that roster. So we'll see if they can keep this going. But if that roster stays healthy, it's as good as you'll find in the NFL.
So the 49ers did end up falling to Green Bay. I really thought that the 49ers were going to win that game. Even though I don't like Green Bay, I am glad that they won that game, because any little teeny margin in our own division is better than Green Bay losing. So,
see, I thought Green Bay was going to win that game.
Yeah, I know. It was a close game. I have to admit, I was really impressed by Jimmy Garoppolo. Played a good game. Had a good final drive to get them in a position to win the game. And their defense gave up 3 points in 37 seconds to Aaron Rodgers. But nonetheless, Garoppolo got them down the field in a nice drive and completed a pass to Kittle in the end zone to get that over the top.
It was kind of like during Russell Wilson's rookie year, the Atlanta playoff game, when they were down, and they were down by a lot at one point. Wilson played lights out and got him back into the game, got him a lead with 30 seconds left, and the defense gave it up.
And Matt Ryan came back.
Yep. And so it seemed very, very reminiscent of that. Very, very similar.
Yeah. But now we're dealing with a division with 2 3-0 teams and a 2-1 team, and we go into the 2-1 team's house this next week.
Mm-hmm.
So, looking ahead just a little bit,
the next 2 games are so big,
and we face the Rams on Thursday Night Football after this Sunday. It's like, who scheduled that? That's a brutal lineup because that game was always going to be marquee. And here you have Seattle, they're at home. That's the saving grace. They've got to win one of these 2 games. They have to, or this season could be over before it even begins.
Yeah, if it dropped, it's begun and it's gone poorly.
Well, you know what I mean. They've got a shot still, but man, against 2 of the toughest teams in the NFC.
Yeah, they've got to go. They've got to win at least one, because if they are 2-3 against with the schedule they've had and all the road games and their Thursday night game mixed in here, and just 5 really good teams that they've had
these
to
are
play
inside the division.
Yep.
These games couldn't be any bigger.
Yeah. So if they're 2-3 at the end of this, you go like, okay, we can play that off. They can go on a run and you get themselves the division or a playoff spot. If they're 1-4 with both of those losses and 4 losses in a row and all of that, I'm sorry. Like,
yeah. Well, I had them in my prediction show. I had them going 5-0.
I know you did.
You were like 3-2, I believe.
I did.
And you were much more realistic than I was.
Well, I had them losing against Minnesota, and you gave me a huge pile of crap about that.
Yes. Well, and rightly so. At the time, here we were, we thought we were going to be on paper. We were paper tigers. This is basically what it amounts to, at least at this point. So far.
The offense is still good. The offense is
good enough to win the division. The defense is bad enough where they can't win against Detroit.
I don't want to hear that. Let's not lose against Detroit. So, like, defensively, I was looking at some of these numbers. 30th in rushing yards per game. they have 0 interceptions overall. 30,
what's going on?
last in the league in first downs per game given up. I mean, it's not pretty. There's so many different things that you could go through.
How do they right this ship, Keith? What do they need to do? I mean, we're not gonna preview the 49er game. We're gonna do that on Thursday, Friday. But what do they really need to do in these next couple games to get this thing back to this team has a lot of pride. So anybody that's giving up on a Pete Carroll run team just doesn't understand the Pete Carroll thing and Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner and Adams and Diggs. These guys are premier athletes and one of the best at overcoming adversity and just being like consummate professionals. This team will not lie down.
Well, and that's one of the things. They need to either have that players only meeting where they get in and vent some stuff out, or they need to do what they did last year when they had that accountability meeting where the coaches and them got together and they went through, hey, what's your responsibility here? You know, like what's your job? Go do your job. And just and that was part of getting things turned around last year, and they need something like that. Now, should they need that? No, I think that's a coaching problem. It's a communication problem from the top down, starting with Norton and
starting with Pete Carroll. Let's be honest. I mean, Pete Carroll does deserve a little bit of criticism.
Oh, sure,
I'm not on the Pete Carroll needs to be bandwagon. I want to let the season play out completely and come to figure that out. But
with the reason why I stay with Norton is because Pete Carroll's messaging, what he says, what he does has not changed at all. What changed was who is designing the scheme, not just calling the plays, but designing the scheme, teaching that scheme to the position coaches who can then teach it to the players. And that's where this is breaking down and not happening. Because that level from Norton to the position player or to position coaches to the players, it isn't getting from Norton to the players. And we haven't seen that in a Pete Carroll team until Norton became the defensive coordinator. And that's a problem.
An indictment. Yeah, that's an indictment.
Yeah.
And we've seen it 2 years in a row. This is not something that's happened in just 3 games. No. This is something that's happened twice now over 2 seasons. He was able to write it one time. He's got a different personnel group this time, but enough consistency there where this should not be happening.
He's got a lot of talent compared to last year. I mean, yes, cornerback is weaker and that, but his defensive front, his front four, is significantly more talented with the guys that he's got, and Kerry Hyder in there, and Gerald Taylor healthy, and Robinson in his second year, and there's a lot of talent there that he didn't have available last year, and he was able to make it work with less talent. So what's going on this year? He's got to figure it out. It comes down to Ken Norton needs to figure out how to get the most out of the talent on his roster, and right now he's not doing it. And to me, it comes down to they've got to do something, whether it be a team only meeting or that, or shift in what their philosophy is, and going away from the cover 3 and going to cover 2, and some of these things that will allow the players to just perform better at the jobs that are being handed to them.
Part of the biggest job that a defensive coach, any coach, can have is putting their players in a position to be successful.
Absolutely.
And if that means, switching some guys up, Sidney Jones comes in, or they change the scheme around a little bit to help the players adapt to something that they're better at, that they can work together as a group at, then they need to do it. But boy, it needs to happen quickly, because whatever is happening now is not sustainable. It's not working. So they've got to change it. It's got to change.
It absolutely needs to change. And we'll see what happens. if Ken Norton and Pete Carroll don't make changes on defense, both in personnel and in like scheme, this is a team that's going to be 1-4 and is going to be, it's a mess, and they're going to tailspin because you go to 1-4 after, 4 straight losses.
You start losing players.
You're going to start losing players. You're going to start seeing guys, especially on defense.
Yeah. That'll tune out. They'll just tune out.
Yep. And you'll never get it back. And once you start losing the locker room, the best thing that an organization can do is fire a coach and get someone in there who the players will listen to again. I mean,
okay.
it's competitive. If you lose the locker room, you're not getting it back.
I really honestly do believe that they're going to right this ship. I just do. I mean, Pete Carroll's got a tremendous track record of making sure stuff gets handled and corrected and so forth. So I do need to put my faith into that right now until I'm proven wrong. But
yep,
it's not pretty. So, okay. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here.
Let's do it.
Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com has all the good stuff. Find us on your favorite podcast app and YouTube, and hit the subscribe button, because that way we land in your feed every week and you don't have to search for us every single time. So until the next time, Keith, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.